Well, good morning again, ICA Tokyo. I am so glad that you guys are in the house today. If you are new today, my name is Pastor Melissa, and my husband Jonathan and I, we are the lead pastors at ICA. He's in America right now, and myself and the kids will join him in a few weeks. We'll be gone just for the summer, but we told you we got a great lineup of speakers this summer. And so this morning, helping us out, joining us is Pastor Daniel Matsunaga. Yes. He's going to be kicking off this new series for us. We're really, really excited about this series. He's going to be with us for the next 4 weeks. Him and his family live near Yokohama. He's got 2 beautiful young girls. They've been serving in Japan for about 16 years. And he is a great, great support to the Japanese churches down in Yokohama, filling in, speaking, supporting any way he can. And so that is why he's here with us today. He is supporting us this summer, and we're so glad he is. So why don't you guys give a big ICA Tokyo welcome to Pastor Daniel.
Good morning, everyone. I don't know. It's not even morning anymore, right? It's good noon and not afternoon. Good noon. What do you say like at this time? I don't know. But it's not afternoon. I guess it's technically afternoon because it's 12:07. But whatever. Hi. That'll work. So, yes, we are going to be looking at Luke 15 today. And we're actually going to be I'm going to be speaking here for the next, including today, the next 3 weeks. And Luke 15 is actually a famous section that have 3 parables in a row. And so the title that they came up with as far as the series is called Stories Jesus Told. And a little bit of background on parables. Parables are something that, I forget, I think my daughter was like, my oldest was in the 2nd grade or 3rd grade or something, and she was doing this thing about fables. And like, okay, what's the difference between a story and a fable and a parable? And I don't really know. But most of the times parables do have, they have a lot of meanings to them. Obviously, fables have meanings to them. Stories have meanings to them. And there are applications that as a listener or as a reader, you could take from these stories that are being told or read, and you could apply it to your life directly. And in this case, with the parables, I believe that we're able to apply it not only the people that Jesus was speaking to, they were able to apply it to their lives, but then also we in 2,000 years later are able to apply it in our lives. And so thinking about that, I think there needs to be a little bit of background explained about what's going on with these 3 parables that are going off. And first, it's again Luke 15. We're looking from Luke 15, 1 through 7. And verse 1 says this: Now the tax collectors and sinners were all drawn near to him. Verse 2, it says, And the Pharisees and the scribes grumbled, saying, This man receives sinners, eats with them. So right now we have basically 3 characters in this story, within the story. But at this point, the story, there's Jesus, and then there's the tax collectors and sinners. And so I guess they're not 3 people, but like 3 groups of people. So the tax collectors and the sinners, and then we have our Pharisees and our scribes, and then, scribes, and then Jesus. We have those 3 big groups, and Jesus and his followers. Now, it's interesting because here they specifically say tax collectors and then they say sinners. And so one thing, again, part of the background is that at this time, Israel is no longer their own nation. They are being subjugated by Rome. And obviously, these tax collectors, what they do, they're collaborators. If you watch movies and stuff, there's these collaborators, and all the people that are, part of that country hates the collaborators because you don't want, you're trying to destroy your enemies, and these collaborators are helping your enemy. And that's what the tax collectors were doing. They were taking their money from the Jewish people, and they were giving the money to the Romans. And so just society-wise, they're like, you guys are lame. We hate you, right? Because you're taking our hard-earned money and giving it to our enemies. And so that's the tax collectors. And then you have the sinners. And who are the sinners? Well, the sinners could be like anybody, people that are adulterous or drunkards and, murderers and things like that. It doesn't specify who the sinners are, but that's one group that we have. The second group we have are the Pharisees and scribes. Now, the Pharisees and scribes they're the religious leaders of that time. Again, if you don't know, Israel they're for all intents and purposes, especially during this time, and even now, people would argue that they are the chosen people. They are the chosen nation. God specifically chose Israel, and through the country of Israel, salvation, redemption, which we ultimately know is Jesus Christ, comes through Israel. And so the Jewish people are they're proud of their heritage, and they're proud of their religiosity, and they're proud of all the things that the fact that they keep the law. Okay, so that's the second group, and then of course Jesus and his followers. Now here we have that they're there, the sinners and the tax collectors are there, and then the Pharisees are grumbling, and it's interesting to me because of what they're grumbling. Now, again, the religious leaders, and I'm a pastor, and one of the things that we do is that we share Jesus with others, and that's the whole reason why we do church, right? And so whenever we see a new person come, or we see an unbeliever coming to the church and they come to Christ, then we're very excited about that. And this is the same case for any religion, be it Buddhism, be it we just pray for the Buddhist world, Islam, and any other religion that you want to talk about. If you are not part of that religion and you have the leader of that religion, they're going to try to get you to come into their religion because they want you there and they're happy about it. And so in this case, the Pharisees should be happy that these tax collectors and these sinners, which the society-wise, they say these are like the dregs of society. They're terrible people. We don't like them. If they become righteous, how great is that? And they're not. They're not happy. It's not like they're complaining that, hey, they're following Jesus, or hey, they're listening to the scriptures, hey, they're listening to the teachings. What they're upset about is the fact that Jesus is taking times with these people that they say, that the society says, that the religious group says are bad people. They're upset that Jesus is spending time with them. So this is the background of this parable, okay? And then it says, in verse 3, so he told them this parable, okay? And so Jesus is great because, a lot of the times he sees a situation, and instead of beating them over the head, he starts telling us stories. And so these parables, they're really great because parables, and a lot of the times there's immediate, like when you hear it, you immediately know this is what he's trying to say. But later on, if you read different parables, there are times where the disciples are like, hey, Jesus, we heard you, and we think we get it, but we don't really get it. And Jesus says, hey, actually, this is what I said, and this is what I meant when I was telling them, but because you're my followers, this is what it means even more. And so parables have these multi-layer explanations and thinking and ways to read it, okay, or ways to digest it. And so that's what I want to do, as we go through these verses. But by the way, I was just telling the first service that I preach at a lot of Japanese churches, and whenever I go, for PowerPoint, whatever, blah, 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 they always end their bulletins. They love bulletins. You guys don't have bulletins, right? No, nobody has. Some people don't even know what a bulletin is, right? What's a bulletin? Yeah, so Japanese people love bulletins. Every church has a bulletin. So basically, it has all the announcements. You guys got cool videos and stuff. You got, Japanese churches have paper. And so, which is fine. And so they always want to write the scriptures and the sermon title. And I'm not very creative, and I hate making titles. And I'm like, Luke 15, 1 through 7. And they're like, no, we need a title. And so, the Bible originally, we don't have scriptures and verses, or as far as chapters and verses. That's something that man added on itself, just because it's easy to find. You're looking through scripture, and if you say, hey, look here, then it's easy to find. But that's something that's been added. And in some Bibles, they actually have titles already there. And so it's really cool. So here in verse 15, or chapter 15, 1 through 7, it's called the parable of the lost sheep, And so if I was being my typical lazy self, I would be like, if the church in Japan's like, hey, what's the title? I'd be like, hey, the parable of the lost sheep. I just take the American, the English title and just, translate it into Japanese and give it to them. But I have to say I don't like this title. Again, I hate making titles, but this one I don't like, and I will tell you what I think it should be. But what I think doesn't really matter. So you guys could decide if it's a good title or not later on. So let's read these verses, 4 through 7. We'll go through one verse at a time. I'll just read it all. Okay, and it says this. What man of you, having 100 sheep, if he has lost one of them, does not leave the 99 in the open country and go after the one that is lost until he finds it? And when he has found it, he lays it on his shoulders, rejoicing. And when he comes home, he calls together his friends and his neighbors, saying to them, "Rejoice with me, for I have found my sheep that was lost." Now, here we have the story that he set up. Again, now we have 99 sheep. Well, there's 100 sheep in the beginning, and then there's 99, and one goes away, and then there's the shepherd. So we have three groups again. We have the 99, we have the one, and then we have the shepherd. Okay. Now, I grew up kind of in the suburbs. I guess it's not the cities. I grew up in the suburbs, and so I never did farming and stuff like that, and so I've gone to petting zoos and I got to touch the sheep and stuff like that, but I never raised a sheep before, and so I don't know a lot about sheep. All I know is that one, if they're for food, they're good. I love sheep. I love lamb meat. I remember when I was growing up, I told my dad, we went to this one place, and I'm like, I know why God always asks them to sacrifice lamb, because it's good. It's one of my favorite meats. Some people say it's too gamey, whatever, but I love it. And so that's all, I know that they're very good. But then the other thing that I had heard is that sheep aren't very smart. They're kind of dumb. And, they're kind of clueless. And then the other thing that I know is that they're very defenseless. They have wool. Yeah, right? That's it. And they don't have claws, they don't have fangs, they don't have armor. They're just very, they look cute. I don't know, maybe they are cute, I don't know. But when you see them as adult, they look cute, but they're defenseless. They're just wandering around. And so you have this sheep, you have 100 of them, and then you have one of them, and they wander off. And now, when we think about okay, hey, I'm raising sheep, for food or whatever to sell and things like that. When you're looking at an investment-wise, I'm a pastor, so I'm not really good at investment banking and all that other stuff. But if you are, then you probably understand. You have 100 sheep. You lose one. Are you going to spend a lot of time and energy looking for the one? Because you have 99. Here in the story, it says they left the 99. These defenseless, dumb beasts, you leave them behind and you're looking for the one. So who knows what these 99 are going to do while you're gone, right? And so this is not a sound investment. But as the story goes, the shepherd does go out and looks for the sheep. And so again, we have the 99, we have the one, and we have the shepherd. And so in my mind, I think, a lot of the times when we preach this sermon, or when you're hearing it for Bible studies and that, a lot of the times people say, hey, the 99 are the people in the church, right? Everybody here right now, you guys are the 99. And the one is the person that left the church, they got hurt, whatever, I don't know. And they decide they're going to be rebellious and they leave the church, okay? And that's fine. And then, of course, the shepherd is Jesus, okay? And I think a lot of the times that's how we are told the story goes. And I do believe that is a valid interpretation. As I said, parables have layers, okay? There's layers to how we see them. And so I think another way that we could interpret this is that, again, in the very beginning, I said there's three groups. There's the Pharisees and the scribes, there's the tax collectors, and then there's Jesus. Now, it says that these guys were grumbling, and then Jesus told them this parable. And so if we see this connection, when we talk, we don't talk randomly, right? We're going for a topic, and we're speaking a certain way, and there's logic to the way we speak when we're talking to people. And so if we're looking at this, then it makes me think, hey, wait a minute, are the 99 the Pharisees and the scribes, and the one the lost, the sinners, the tax collectors, and of course is the shepherd, Jesus? And that's how I start to think about this, and I'm like, okay, if this is the case, how do we today apply that in our lives now, okay? And so I'm looking at this, and I think that it tells us three different things when we look at it in this way. I think the first thing that we see is this, that the lost sheep didn't find the shepherd, okay? The shepherd went and looked for the lost sheep. I think a lot of the times when we come to Christ, again, I even said it, we come to Christ. I found Christ. And I think we think that it's what we did that brought us to salvation. But the thing is, the shepherd is out looking for the sheep. And so, again, the sheep, if we're going through this this idea that the sheep is lost and is kind of dumb, they're not gonna find its way back to where the rest of the people are, or the rest of the flock. I always hear these amazing stories that like the dog, they move somewhere, or the dog's, and he travels across America. We're not in America, but let's say across Japan to find their owner, right? Because they could do that. Dogs could do that. But sheep can't do that. They can't be looking for their flock. They can't be looking for their owner. It's the owner, the shepherd, that is going out to look for the sheep. And so we think about this and we think wait, okay, a lot of the times we think that, hey, it was through our understanding, and there is part of it. There's things like that. I think the final decision as far as coming to Christ is on us. We have to say the sinner's prayer. We have to recognize that we're sinful. We have to recognize that he's holy. We have to recognize that we need to come into reconciliation with him. But the thing is, that's us recognizing all that, but it's God, it's the Spirit speaking into our hearts to tell us, hey, you need to recognize that. The second thing we find out is this, is that when the good shepherd found the sheep, it says he laid it on his shoulders and carried it home. Now, actually, side point here, this is apparently really hard to do. I did not know this. I was just talking between services, and sheep, I guess, they don't want to be carried, and they're heavy, okay? But here, what I'm trying to say is, with this point, is this. I think a lot of the times when, when people come to Christ and they're coming into the church, we a lot of the time say, you know what, you need to do this, this, and this, and then you'll be a good Christian. You have to attend this class, you have to attend this thing, you have to do this. And if you don't do these things, then it's not great. And then let's say they are like this wretched sinner, or they went away from the church. When they're coming back, we have this phrase in Christian circles called reconciliation. And it sounds really good. Reconciliation does sound fine, but it's basically a list of things that you have to do before we recognize that you are good enough to be back, okay? Reconciliation sounds way better than that. But we do that. We kind of hammer these people saying, hey, look, you were guilty of these things, and so that's why you have to do these things to make us and you feel better about you coming into this situation. But here we see that the shepherd doesn't do that. He doesn't sit there and be like, hey, sheep, you follow me. I'm going to drag you, I'm going to put a rope around your neck and just drag you all the way back to the flock. Or like, hey, sheep, just follow me, Hey, if you fall over the rock or whatever, you're on your own. We're crossing a river, you're on your own. No, he doesn't do that. He takes the sheep that probably doesn't want to come with him. It's heavy. And he puts it on his shoulder, and he lovingly carries it back to the flock. I think a lot of the times we forget that, especially when we're in the church and we've been coming to the church a lot of the times, we forget that moment of salvation that we had ourselves. I don't know what your situation is. I don't know where you went through, what kind of life you lived. I'm one of those people that have grown up in the church. And so I never really did anything too wretched in the sense I wasn't going crazy. But, there's a point where you recognize, hey, I'm lost. I'm not good. I need something more than myself. And And Christ erases it away. And he shares his grace and his infinite mercy upon us. And we're just reborn in such a way. But then we live life for a long time. We come to church and we forget that moment of salvation. You remember it like, hey, it was this day, this is what happened, this is what I did. But that feeling of relief knowing that, hey, he's not going to hammer me and remind me that I was wretched. Amen. He took me in despite of what I did. And that's what the shepherd does. That's what Jesus does for us. The third point we find is this, that the shepherd rejoices over this lost sheep. And he not only rejoices over it, he tells his friends, and what does it say? It says, he calls together his friends and his neighbors, saying to them, rejoice with me that I found the sheep. It's something that they are happy about. It's something that they're celebrating, and you know, it blows my mind that, like, you know, this was a risky move. It was, like, investment wise, it was a risky move, and so, like, hey man, like, he got one back. He could have lost all of them, and so, like, would you be super happy about that? I mean, like, if you, like, let's say, you know, you're like money-wise, okay? Like, you have 100,000 yen and you're like, okay, I'm going to put it into the stock market, and, you know, I'm only going to, I don't know, I'm not very good at this explanation, but, like, you know, the risk versus the reward. Your reward, the risk is huge. You're going to lose all 100,000, but the reward is you got another 10 yen. You could have lost all 100,000 of your investment and you got 10 yen back. Are you going to celebrate? Nah, you won't. But that's what he's doing. And so the reason why I don't like this title, the lost sheep, is because of this. A lot of the times, I think when we talk about this passage and subsequently the next two parables that I'm going to be speaking on, is that we focus on the lostness of that thing. In this case, it's just sheep. We focus on that person, that individual that is lost. And hence, we call it the parable of the lost sheep. But I think that our focus should be shifted on the seeker, on the person that is looking for that lost thing. In this case, I believe that this parable should be more called the Good Shepherd. Because he makes a huge risk, and after he makes that huge risk, he lovingly and caringly takes this lost sheep, and then he rejoices over it. How does this affect us today? You know, I think a lot of the times, you know, we come to church and we hear sermons, and you know, I'm guilty of it too. we look at this and, you know, we like to explain the scripture. Hey, this is what the scripture says. This, you know, here, this is the Greek, this is the Hebrews and stuff like that. But it's like, how does it apply to me? Like, you know, why am I here? Why am I sitting here 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, however minutes long we're here? What does this mean to me today? And I think this is, of course, the most important thing is to recognize that there's a good shepherd. That good shepherd is Jesus. He's looking for us. He's always caring for us. Of course, that's the most important thing that you need to take away from this this talk today. But again, it's important to know this. But like, how does this apply to me? Like, how do I live this out then? Okay, like, how am I going to live this out? And I think the way that we live this out is to look at it by looking at it through both lenses of the Pharisees and the scribes, and the tax collectors and the sinners. Now, again, I don't think the Pharisees and the scribes were really like bad people in the sense, okay, you know. I gotta be honest with you, like, you might be shocked about this, you know, we're Protestants and stuff like this. But when I was going to language school, when I first came to Japan, I became friends with another student in the language school, and this guy, he was a Filipino guy, but the guy was actually a Catholic priest, and we became really good friends. And where am I going with this? The reason why I say this is this, like, you know, I think any religious person, in the sense, like if they're like a religious, you know, a person that's a teacher, you know, a sensei or whatever, like a priest or a pastor or even a monk. There's another church that I go to quite often, and there's this one monk that, like, he's a Buddhist monk, and he's always hanging out at the church. He's wild. He's really funny, but he's always at the church. And, like, you know, hey, we're a very different religious, you know, I mean, you know, Catholics and Protestants, we're Christians and stuff like that. But the fact of what I'm trying to say is this, like, religious people in general are really great guys and girls, ladies, right? The whole point is that they're trying to make the world a better place in their own different ways. And so, you know, the Pharisees and the scribes, I don't think they were really bad people. And I don't think that they started off so self-righteous and so condemning. But somewhere along the way, they became that way. And, you know, I got to be honest, I do that too. There are times in my life, in the past and even now, that I can be condemning in a way. And not like in a bad way, but like, you know, you kind of start off little, right? I was joking because one of the guys he's wearing shorts, right? And honestly, I'm talking about this guy wearing shorts on the worship band, but I want to be him. I want to wear shorts and t-shirts and stuff like that. Like, I go to Japanese pastors meeting, wearing shorts and t-shirts, and they always are. I'm like, it's a meeting. Why do I got to be dressed up, right? Everybody else is in like suits and they're nice and stuff like that, but I'm like in shorts and t-shirts. So I don't care, right? I'm dressed to be comfortable, right? But, you know, for them, it's like that you can't do that. And, like, again, like, there's different things, like, oh, that person, like, back in the day when I went to Bible college, like, you couldn't wear jeans. Like, oh my goodness, like, you heathen, like, you're wearing jeans. Like, you know, like, Melissa, she's wearing open-toed shoes here. Like, what in the world? She's a harlot, right? That's like, you know, that's how it was. That was the thinking, right? And, like, you know, some of these things, they're like, now we're like, they're inconsequential, right? But the thing is, sometimes we get so hung up on things, on the way it looks, on the way people do. I remember there was one church I went to, and, you know, here in Japan, and I didn't know. I felt so bad later. I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. They had a stage, and, you know, in Japan, we take off our shoes, obviously, right? And there's slippers, and so, like, you know, I'm walking around the church with slippers, and I just went up on the stage with my slippers because, you know, I'm like, hey, you know, it's really cold. I'm going up on... And then, like, I find out you're not supposed to go up on that platform with your slippers on. Like, it's like holy up there. Like, you can't come into the church with your shoes on, but up there, not even slippers. And so I was like, oh, I'm sorry. And I don't think anybody noticed it. I don't think anybody said anything. But there were some older people there, and I know it probably bothered them really bad that I was wearing my slippers up there, and I had no clue. And, like, I don't think that these older people are bad, you know? I do it all the time. But the thing is, I think sometimes that if we do it, and then we do it again and again and again and again, it kind of builds up. Till all of a sudden, we think that what we do is way more important than what God is trying to do.
Yeah, that's right.
And I'm not saying that, you know, there are people here that are like Pharisees and scribes and stuff like that. But the thing is, it is so easy for us to slip into that. And then, again, looking at about this parable through the eyes of the tax collectors and sinners is this. It's the fact that we're all sinners. We all need salvation. Even now, I need to constantly repent for things. I am not perfect by no means. There are times where I get, like, especially when I drive, like, I'm an angry driver. I am an angry driver. I don't know what it is, man. These roads, like, so especially in Yokohama, the roads are so narrow. They are so narrow. And I got such a big car. I regret it. I regret, like, so, like, I was in Fukuoka before, and so, like, I bought my car thinking, like, oh, like, Fukuoka streets. Nah, man, Yokohama streets are, like, I mean, Tokyo is crazy, but Yokohama has, like, hills and stuff, too. So it's like, more crazy. And then you have these old people driving these big old cars, too. And I'm like, the other day, so you can hear my angriness came. Like, the other day, like, this car, like, had, like, all this room, like, to the, like, his right, or I guess his left. He just had to go, like, 1 inch, but he wouldn't, and he was honking his horn. So I went to my inch. I had to put in my mirrors, and I was able to scoot right by him, putting in my mirrors. I'm like, look, dude, see, we got tons of room here. And he was angry at me, and I was kind of getting frustrated because I was trying to get my daughter to the train station. And, but anyways, my point is this. We're sinners. I'm a pastor. I'm a sinner. I do stupid stuff like that all the time. Okay. And again, some of the sins, I mean, like, in the grand scheme of things, sin is sin, and, it does separate us from God. But some sins, obviously, we like to rank sins, and this sin is bigger than that, and whatever, right? It doesn't matter. Sin is sin. And God has given us his infinite grace. And it's infinite because he gives it to us on a daily basis. Despite all the stupid stuff, despite all the angry stuff that we do, despite all the mess ups that we do, be it consciously or unconsciously, God's mercy and his grace follows every day. Yeah. The sinners, the tax collectors, they don't recognize that. They don't know that. But when they experience that, and because we have experienced that, our heart should just be a heart of gratitude, a heart of thanksgiving. And in essence, we should want other people to know this feeling as well. And so, as we close, I want us to think about this parable again. Of course, in the traditional sense, hey, the 99, the church people, the one is gone away. But think about it with this Pharisees and this tax collector lens as well. Because I think a lot of the times when we go to church, again, I think we think that it's everything that we have done. But it's not. I told the first group this story about, I think a lot of the times when we're lost, we feel a sense of despair and a sense of hopelessness. And I don't know, maybe there's somebody here that feels that way today. Maybe you're thinking like, I am here, I've come here several weeks, I've come here several months, maybe several years, but I don't identify myself as a Christ follower. Or maybe it's your first time and you're feeling like, you know what? I'm lost. I am hopeless. I don't know where to go. And I remember I had my younger daughter one day, we were out shopping or whatever. Long story short, like my wife was gonna go to the restroom and she's like, hey, you wanna go with me? And my daughter was like, no, I wanna go with daddy. And I'm like, nah, like, it's the guy's bathroom, go with your mom or whatever. And like, she was like waffling back and forth. And me and my wife both went to the restroom thinking that she was going with the other person. And so like, I went to the restroom, I did my business, came back, and like, I'm waiting there. And my wife and my other daughter comes back and we're like, where's the younger one? And so we panic, right? And so we're looking for her. We're going to different stores. We're going all over the place because it's the mall. We're looking. This whole time, my daughter is also panicking. And in her mind, she's thinking, man, my parents left me. I'm all by myself. She's crying. She's talking to people. Have you seen them? They look Asian. We're in Japan, right? Everybody looks Asian. So she's like, she doesn't know what to do. She's crying. She feels like she's alone. There's no hope for her. And in her mind, all she could think about was she was alone and she couldn't find her way back home. But during that whole time, we were also looking for her. And so there might be people here today that are thinking, I don't know. I feel lost. But I want you to know that Jesus is searching for you today. He has been searching for you from the time you were born to even today. He has been searching for you. And so I want to close with this, with this prayer. I want you guys to close your eyes, bow your heads, and think about it for a little bit. Think about where you are in your life. Maybe you are a Christian. You've been a Christian for a long time. And you're starting to notice other new Christians, and you think, look at this guy or this girl. What are they thinking? They can't be doing that. They need to do this. Or you look at a different church and be like, if that church would do it this way, if that pastor would speak this way, if that worship team did it this way, that church would succeed. And again, none of these things are really bad inherently. But when we start to focus on those things, it could go crazy. And so if there's anybody here that feels like, hey, you know what? I've been doing that lately. I want you to pray and ask God to soften your heart. And again, if there's anybody here that feels like, hey, I identify a lot with that lost sheep. I'm out, I'm wandering, I don't know, I'm lost, I'm hopeless, I'm in despair. I just need some direction. I need some guidance. Yeah. But I feel like I'm trying to do all of this on my own. I want to remind you, Jesus is looking for you. So let us pray together. If you fall into any of those categories, let's pray. Dear Father in heaven, we just thank you for this day, and we thank you for Luke 15, 1-7. This parable about this shepherd taking a huge risk to look for that one lost sheep. And we're reminded that you've done the same thing. You left your throne in heaven to come to this earth to ultimately die. We just celebrated Easter a little bit ago. To ultimately die for us so that we might be reconciled with God. And so there are probably people here today that are starting to feel like, hey, you know what? Maybe I am starting to become self-righteous, a little bit prideful in my religiosity. I think all of us that have been serving you for a long time can say that we are always in danger of this. And so, Father, I pray that you soften their heart and that you remind them again that time that they came to Christ, that time that they found salvation and they received your grace and your mercy. And Father, I pray for those that feel that today, hey, I am lost. I don't know where I'm going. But Father, I just pray that they could just quiet their hearts for a moment and hear you calling to them, saying, come to me. I am finding you, and I'm going to lead you back to the flock. Father, I just pray that throughout this week that every single person will think about this message, think about where they are in their life, and continue to praise you. We thank you in your name.